Thank you guys for coming. I'm Dan of the two Dans from Graffiti Park. This is our friend, the Amoeba Light thing that's joining us today. We're trying to get better content so that the people that aren't in the room can watch this after the fact on YouTube or Instagram or whatever tickles their fancy. So that's why I have a mic and a camera and all this fun stuff. So that's Alex behind the lens. So that's what we do that for, so that we can continue to create our content library online for the friends that can't make it here. But sorry if that's weird. I feel like Tim Cook. But welcome. Today's a really fun topic. One of the biggest questions we get asked from artists that come to our events is, how do we get involved? This isn't going to be specifically about how do you apply for jobs for Graffiti Park. If you haven't worked with us in the past, or if you have a little refresher, the way you get involved and work with us is you show up to things. We know that you can paint. When something comes across our desk that's in your wheelhouse, we kick it your way. And so we try to share the love as much as we can, but it's also a two-way street. As you get into things, if you're not in front of, if you're not interacting with us, sometimes it's hard to remember everyone that we come across. So this is more though specifically focused on how to apply for mural jobs in general. And you could utilize these skills to enter into different markets, start your professional portfolio, all that different types of fun stuff. So I'm gonna try to keep this short and sweet, both for you all, myself, and the video. As you have questions, let me know. Raise your hand. We'll make it a dialogue. It'll be a fun time. So I always like to shout out this one. Cody's in the room. He did this. This is one of my favorite images we have. Kind of showcases the scale of the work that we do, and that hopefully professional artists or aspiring professional artists can aspire to create. It's like a 30-foot elevator shaft that's painted on there by Tony or Tone Castle. Let's jump into it. How to apply for mural jobs. So a little bit about us, a little recap. We've been in operation for just shy of 5 years. April will be 5 years, which is crazy to think about, half a decade. And we've been painting murals that entire time. In that 5 years, over 300,000 square feet of mural space across hundreds of different projects and dozens of different clients. And we've had the privilege to work with hundreds of different artists, both in the Valley. Some have moved away, some are kind of back and forth. So not just Las Vegas-based artists, but artists from other cities, or certainly other countries. This is, again, a little showcase of kind of the two different examples of the projects we have. Here you can see we're all throughout different hallways, 3 different artists working there. Up there, top left, it's Basic High School, another really fun project, cool collaboration. One of the things, you can think about applying for mural jobs both as an individual, but one of the recurring themes I'm gonna bring up is utilize your resources. So one of the things I'll mention is figure out like what's in your wheelhouse to do. Can you do the job you're applying for? And sometimes the answer, if you're honest with yourself, might be like, that's a big undertaking for me to do in 2 weeks or however it might be. So a lot of times these places will have, wherever you're applying for, within the budget, it's within your jurisdiction to either work with another artist, an artist team, whether that's Graffiti Park or whoever that is. So the reason I went down that rabbit hole is that was 2 artists that had not met before doing that project, those wolves up there, but we knew it would be a massive undertaking to do in the allotted time. So we just kind of collaboration over competition, made them work together, and now they know each other, they've worked together, collaborated on that mural, got it done in time. So that's about us. So getting into it, first things first, it's kind of a sequential process. The first 2 steps are a little bit more philosophical than practical, meaning you have to make the choice. There is a difference between art that you make for yourself, that is a part of your creative inspiration, a part of your soul, and art that you're gonna make for other people. And the sooner that you can understand that and make that choice and recognize the difference between the two, the easier time you'll have. There's a difference between the two, and you have to manage expectations. And you have to have thick skin in the industry. And so if you're tied to your art as a passionate part of your soul and you're not given that opportunity, you're not gonna make it too far until you make that choice. And so this is one of the biggest things that in the past 5 years working with artists that have never gotten paid for their work or are looking to get paid more for their work or step out of their comfort zone is you have to recognize that this is work, and that's okay. And sometimes you'll create art that's just for you or just for your portfolio, and you should do that. Not sometimes, you should do that. But also recognize that, doing the Boys and Girls Club hands on a wall is probably not going to be super passionate about it. It's not going to give you the same feeling as painting something you want to on a canvas or your preferred medium. But if you're getting paid for it and the client's asking for a specific thing, there's a difference. So make the choice. Throw a little balance in there to understand there's a balance to that. Another shout out here This was a triple collab between Black, Mixer, and Mario, a fun one. Again, I put this because maybe they wouldn't have decided to do a mural on that wall with a bunch of stuff on the wall, but the client asked for it, so we made it happen, right? Number two, which kind of goes along with number one, is the reality is you are going to be told no often, but that's a good thing. That's gonna make you a better artist. Recognize that you might apply for 100 different projects, you might get a handful of them, you might get half of them, you likely won't get half of them. If you do, let me know, you should be teaching this class. But you will get told no, and that's okay. And a lot of times you'll get told no and not told why. And you'll be specifically actually told we can't tell you why. So recognize that will be going on. I put these doors here to showcase that, that's okay. If one door closes, as you receive one no, there's a lot of other doors that you can go down. I will say that when you work with Graffiti Park, one of the things that's pretty transparent across the board is you guys see the yeses. You're working at the yeses. There are quite a few more no's that you guys don't, or hit us up in 6 months, or hit us up in a year when the budget's there, or not right now, we've had a creative difference, or we've been planning for a project that's gonna happen and it's gonna be on our books, and then all of a sudden that funding fell through, right? So no's happen in a lot of different ways, and they happen more often than yeses, but you're not gonna get any yeses if you're afraid of the no's. Make the choice and recognize the reality of this world. And that's probably just like a life lesson, not just an art applying lesson, but All right, so now that you've done those two things, you've accepted that this is work, you're probably gonna be told no, you're like, I don't care, Dan, I'm still gonna do it. Let's talk about the practical steps you can take to actually apply for mural jobs. So before you apply for anything, you wanna get your ducks in a row. I wanna focus on these 4 on the left before we jump into that bullet point on the right. So first and foremost, you wanna level yourself up. So get yourself a professional email. It shouldn't be like skaterforlife96@gmail. Get yourself a little something professional. It doesn't have to be your name, but something that is your brand or representative of your brand. I prefer Gmail. I'm not paid by Google, but if you wanna pay me, go ahead. I'm not paid by them, but I'm gonna endorse them a lot. It's free, comes with like 250 gigabytes of free space you can utilize. But yes, get an email. Also get a calendar. Gmail, funny enough, connects to Google Calendar, which is a pretty good app. You can have lots of different calendars. That's a fun time. So have an email, have a calendar, you wanna be organized. I think an underlooked thing when it comes to, a lot of artists aren't really thinking about it, and I get it, is a file management system. So I'm gonna plug Google Drive, stay along that line. It's free, 250 gigs. And then if you need more space than that, whenever, it's relatively cheap. And it all synchronizes. That's one thing. Dan and I have notes from like meetings when we were in college, conceptualizing this company, that we started on a Google Drive. So it's like, we really pride ourselves in documentation. Just today, we did a walkthrough with a client, and it's a very similar job to something we did 3 years ago. We were able to pull up those notes, find that square footage, see what we quoted someone 3 years ago, and kind of plug and play there. So have an email, calendar, a file management system is kind of to help to get the ball rolling. And then lastly, you're gonna have to pay to play a little bit. So some of these next things I'm gonna talk about is ideally you have some sort of a budget you're gonna work with to get yourself off the ground. Fortunately, unfortunately, that's just the way the world works. So what I mean by that is going over to the other ones. Now as an artist, you by all means can operate as an individual. You can get paid by your name, get a check in your name, that's totally fine. If your aspiration is to eventually grow your clientele, your portfolio, your revenue, then what I would recommend, or what we've been told by our people, is to form a business. So that was one of the first steps Dan and I did in April of 2020, was to form Graffiti Park LLC. And so that comes with costs, right around $500, give or take, might be a little bit more or less nowadays. When you form your business in the state of Nevada, you'll get a Nevada business license, so a state of Nevada business license. You're kind of off to the races at that point. It's a big fun day. Shout out to Mingster, just formed his LLC. So he's getting going on that, right? That adds a degree, aside from the accounting or tax advantages that may or may not give you at a certain point, that adds a degree of professionality to your work when clients are paying an LLC or something of that sort. We also have, shameless plug, how to start a business as a free class available on YouTube, where we talk more about that. Next up, your business licenses. I just talked about Nevada state business licenses. State of Nevada is interesting. You gotta have a city Las Vegas one if you're doing one in the city of Las Vegas, you gotta have a city of Henderson business license if you're doing a job there, city of North Las Vegas business license if you're doing a job there. I would not recommend you go out and buy all of those right now. A lot of times if you're getting a job or doing a job in any of those jurisdictions, they'll give you some time to take the 30 minutes to go online and get that business license. So don't spend that money. Those can be anywhere from like 60 bucks to 100 bucks depending on the day of the week and what city it is. But just be aware that you're gonna be asked those. So if you work at the city of Henderson, they're gonna ask for your business information, they're gonna ask for your city of Henderson business license, and then they're gonna ask for insurance, the next point there. All right, so you're gonna wanna have general liability insurance, just a general. Workers' comp is always fun. You wanna be covered on job sites. Depending on where you're working, they may ask for one or both. So a big benefit of working with Graffiti Park is we pay workers' comp for the amount of artists we work with throughout the year. So last year we 1099'd like over 70 different artists that we worked with. If any of those artists didn't carry their own workers' comp insurance, we pay for that, we cover that. So when you work for a Graffiti Park, you're covered, whether you have it or not, but we also pay for that. Now, in the event that you have your own business, you have your own workers' comp and we 1099 you, it's always good to know that because then we don't have to pay for that from our company because you have your own. So the reason I bring that up is if you're gonna subcontract with other companies or depending on what it is, a lot of times it's worthwhile to have your own insurance. Again, that might be something that, and we have a good insurance lady, we're happy to provide that. To get as an insurance broker. Again, we don't get any kickbacks or anything, full disclosure. She just helps us out. We give you her info. She'll help you out as she can. But that does, again, lend to a degree of professionality. W-9, short and sweet, fill out a W-9, have it ready to go, dated for every year. If you get paid by any company, they're gonna ask for a W-9. And again, if you're filing your taxes under your business entity, then you should also file your taxes. You should do that. I got a tax lady too, no kickbacks. You're gonna need a W-9, so whether it's your company or as an individual. As you may have noticed, I haven't said anything about art. That's why you gotta make the choice. It is a little bit of work on the front end, right? Now let's dive into the art world a little bit. Portfolio. I'm sure most of you know what a portfolio is. Just a couple tips from what we've learned while applying for these jobs is you're not just gonna have, a booklet of 50 different images of what you've done. You might have that, you should have that of all of your work. A lot of times they let you submit, a minimum of 3, a maximum of 10 kind of thing, depending on the jurisdiction or the system you're using. And a lot of times they don't wanna just see the image, they wanna see the image, the medium you use, the size of the piece, the date and location of it, as well as a description. A lot of these RFP, which is request for proposal, it's kind of a scary word in the art world. A lot of these RFP and application process, they're really big on worded descriptions of concepts. I don't get it, but that's just what they are. They're really into that. And they want you to describe your work, and they're in these board meetings with arts commission people, and they gotta talk about it and feel like they're making a really important decision. So have that, top 10's always good. We have like a letterhead on top of ours, kind of professionalizes it. We have a Word doc version in our Google Drive, as well as a PDF version. We can update it as we need, and that kind of thing. So you wanna have a portfolio, and you also wanna have a CV, which is like curriculum vitae, some Latin fun thing. It's like a resume, but think of it specifically about like mural work, right? So you don't wanna put like you were a host at Chili's on your CV. So this is kind of an example. If you were a host at Chili's, I rock with Chili's. That was not a diss. Triple dipper for the win. But here's some samples of our CV. This is like our CV. So you can see like this is the first page, looks like a resume, but it's from a professional capacity. I'm happy to share this with you if you'd like a hard file, but it kind of just talks about some of that, like about us, like 100+ mural and multi-mural installations, when we began operations, some notable clients, we have some references, City of North Las Vegas, Boys and Girls Club, the services we provide. We have Dan and I under there, kind of let them know who we are as the curators, kind of leaders of the company. Obviously our contact information at the top. And then on the right, that's gonna be a little bit hard to tell, but here we have kind of a list of all of our commission work. And then those hyperlinks you see hyperlink to our website. So if someone is like, oh, you did Ronzoni Elementary School, and they click to 2024, it brings them to our website to show that project. And as you guys know, we're in an interesting kind of position because we're an art collective, and so we're curating artwork. And so it's very important to us that we showcase who is doing that art. So like when we're putting together a portfolio, it says artwork done by whoever the artist was, curated by us. You know, we're never taking ownership for any artwork that we didn't do. And similarly on our website, all that is credited to the artist as well. Shameless plug, make an account on our website, you can have a free portfolio and we can tag you on projects you work with. So graffitipark.org. So that's kind of an example. We have commission work, community collaborative art projects, so kind of our beginning, municipalities, nonprofits, our live painting show and events. So really fully encapsulates everything we've done. I will say a lot of times they have a page limit on your CVs. So there's a reason why it's like size 8 font, I'm trying to get that in there. That's the samples. And then obviously our portfolio isn't in here, but that's pretty straightforward. Usually just has an image with like a paragraph underneath it with the information that I talked about. All right, so now we've talked about making the step, or making the choice. We know we're gonna get told no, we're okay with it. We got our ducks in a row. Now, like, how do we actually find jobs? There's really no right or wrong to this. I just wanna share with what we've experienced over the last 5 years. Before you get into finding jobs, and I'll touch on each one of these, you wanna know like your price and level of work. If you're just starting off, like recognize when you enter this game of RFPs, there's gonna be jobs for like $1,500 for utility boxes, and there's gonna be jobs for like $150,000 for the entire outside of a building in North Las Vegas. Like, so you have to recognize like, if you're just starting out, if you're just trying to get some reps in, things under your belt, like don't look down upon those smaller jobs. Like it adds up quickly. What we found in working with these different municipalities, namely City of Henderson and City of North Las Vegas, once you get in there, they're familiar with you and they're more likely to at least consider you for a next job, not necessarily choose you, but if you've been here for a while or if you're from here, you know it's a pretty big, small city. People kind of know what they're talking about or know who you are when they're talking about these things. Know your price and level of work, what you're willing to apply for. Our general rule of thumb is if we want to do it, we apply for it. Whether it's $1,300 or $130,000 or $30,000, whatever, we just like mural jobs and like putting people on. So, but recognize like that takes work. That might take you a couple hours to apply for that, right? So just kind of understand what you're doing. I put in here the good old RFP. That's what a lot of these are called, requests for proposals. Some of them, like City of Henderson, they've just switched to the CAFE system, which is call for entry. A lot of cities use that, like Denver uses that. A lot of different municipalities in different areas use the CAFE system. So I'd recommend making an account on there. And then you can see all the stuff. You can upload a portfolio on there. It's pretty straightforward. Each application's a little different. So City of Henderson, like they're trying to get better at their RFP. Some of this stuff might be RFP, which is State of Nevada NGEM, I believe is what it's called. NGEM, I believe with that, you're gonna need a business entity. I don't think as an individual you can sign up for NGEM. I might be wrong, prove me wrong, but I do think you have to have a business to set up for that. So basically, anyone here seen War Dogs? Okay, War Dogs. So you know how like Jonah Hill and the other homie are like gaming the system and they're making bids on like ammunition and stuff for the federal government? So that's what NGEM is. It's like, it's basically the state of Nevada will be like, we need new lighting in this facility, or literally there's the reason I bring up the War Dogs thing is there's a bunch of Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department bids. They need shit, stuff all the time. That being said, they're few and far between, but there are mural jobs on NGEM. Like City of Las Vegas uses NGEM. If the job is big enough, City of Henderson might use it. It's basically RFP process. The long and the short of it is when the state gets a certain amount of money, they give these cities a certain amount of money. In order to justify spending those taxpayer dollars, they have to allow as many people as possible to apply for those jobs. That then the Las Vegas Arts Commission or the Henderson Arts Advisory Commission then selects the artist for that job. So that's kind of how the funnel goes. And so in order for them to feel good about giving that money away, they want as many people as possible to apply for them. But you guys are in a good position because you're sitting in this class, because a lot of people that apply for those don't really realize the work that goes into applying for those things. And this is no diss on the city by any means, but they weed out people by nature. So if you haven't done those first three slides, then you're not gonna get very far by applying to those. Or you probably won't apply because you'll be like, I don't have any of that, right? So that's NGEM, massive system, lots of different stuff. You pick your industry code, you get jobs sent to you based off your industry code. City of Henderson uses Cafe. City of North Las Vegas, City of Las Vegas, and Clark County, like make sure you're following their Instagram pages, look at their websites. A lot of these places, the arts is the Parks and Recreation Department. They're the ones facilitating the murals and art stuff. Like literally, Dan and I will just send each other DMs on Instagram of like when Clark County is announcing a job. And they put all that info in there, and then there's usually a bit link or bit.ly link or whatever in their bio to go apply for those things. So a part of finding jobs is like doing your own due diligence and looking for these things. You can even Google, mural jobs in this city or this location. If you're willing to travel or you co-locate in different locations, like, don't sell yourself short. Look at places in St. George, Cedar City, if you're willing to travel, if you're capable and willing of doing that. Those where I would start municipalities wise. And then obviously there's private opportunities. We live in Vegas, it's growing. We got sports teams, businesses, companies, the residential route, brands, whatever it might be. I mean, if you're willing to take those steps to make that jump, these require a little bit less of those ducks we talked about earlier. A lot of times they'll be like, can I pay in cash? Can you do it in a week? Recognize some of these might have less of a budget. They're less willing to pay you industry standard rates. But if you're just starting out and you're just trying to get some reps in, do that. One of the things I want to say with finding jobs, and I'll touch on this, is recognize like draftsmanship is a phrase that Black, if you're familiar with Las Vegas artists, Black is pretty famous out here for his personality and getting up, essentially, both private and in the graph scene. But that being said, like he talks about this phrase called draftsmanship. Have a client pay you to learn a new skill. So don't just apply for jobs that are in your wheelhouse. Be willing to do that logo design or reach out to places that you wouldn't typically frequent or think about would want a mural. Pandr Design Co., P-A-N-D-R Design Co. They're similar. They curate murals, they do a lot of murals. They got a pretty good following on Instagram. They have a lot of free resources, so plug in them. Look at their bio or their Instagram. They got a lot of free resources on their website. She just released a video, I think today or very recently, talking about the importance of cold emails in starting her business. And so like, if you can get contact information and you're about it and you want to put in the reps, like reach out to people. That's finding jobs. Any questions, comments? Feeling very Tim Cook, yep.
I know that you touched on it a little, but what would you say are the pros and cons of working with government call versus more private or business opportunities?
It's a good question. So pros and cons of working with more municipality government versus private. More municipality government typically have a higher budget. They're typically towards the $25 to $35 a square foot, like industry leading rate. And you'll typically find someone who's an advocate in the arts somewhere along that process, either in the Parks and Rec department or someone who kind of like is like, no, like we want to pay, they want to work with an artist. Working in the private realm, it's hit or miss. You might get someone who's all about it, who wants to pay you your worth, whatever. You're gonna get a lot of people that are like, I have this sick wall and I have $500. Like, can you paint this awesome mural? So it's kind of a mixed bag when you go in that other direction. I love restaurants, I love good food. Working with restaurant owners has been a challenge of ours in the last 5 years. So, which again might be, I don't know if that's the nature of the restaurant owners we're working with or the restaurant industry in general. So those are kind of like pros to working in the private sector. You can get them more often. There's a lot less rules. There's a lot less of this like bureaucratic kind of tape that we've talked about. You're not submitting an RFP process if you're painting someone's like hummus restaurant, which we've done. At the same time, you might be working with a different type of clientele. And then obviously with the municipalities, you have more of a budget, it's a little bit more professional. There's a little bit more of art by committee. When you work in the government sector, there's a lot of opinions and whatnot, and that's just kind of the nature of how that works. So pros and cons to both. Have a wide net. Don't limit yourself to certain things. And admittedly, like people or these municipalities, like you have plenty of notice on these art jobs. Like you'll know months, if not months, weeks in advance. So if you're doing your job, everyone's busy, you might have like a 9 to 5, you might whatever. But like if you're doing your job and you're like applying for these or they're on your calendar, then like you can do those and then go look for the other stuff. Like I would cast a wide net. So good question. Perfect example, Black, like I'll plug him, talk about him all day. Like he works with us, he works with ISI, he works with Clark County, he works with City of Las Vegas, so when I called him yesterday, he was on the way to like a residential private mural gig he got. So he's, wherever we'll take him. But that's finding jobs. Applying for jobs. So if you notice so far, this is like the shortest slide that we've gotten to. It's like once you actually get into the application, take a deep breath. Some of them might be a little bit overwhelming. At least in my experience, it took a couple years to get used to all the ins and outs of them. Read the full application. A lot of times they'll have like a PDF you can download, or it's right there on the website. So read the whole thing. Some of it might be legal jargon, but some of it will be like, you might find a little snippet in there like you're responsible for upkeep on this mural for the next 2 years. Be aware of that. But just read the full application to see what you need. It'll tell you in the application, you're gonna need this business license, you're gonna need proof of this, proof of that. Again, maybe wait till you get it or they ask you for it or to get that actual information, but at least you know kind of what to expect. And then they'll typically have like a contract and expectations in there before you even apply. A lot of these have, I shouldn't say a lot of them, half of them will have like calls for inquiry, as they're called. They're phrased differently. Basically, it's a Zoom call, or I think they're mostly either Zoom calls or, I don't think any of them are in person. They might be. But it's basically a Zoom call where they go over the application and it's a Q&A. So you can be like, do you accept sculpture work for this application or whatever? So attend those, especially if you've never applied for these. That's a free resource, so you can get a little bit more, feel a little bit more confident as you apply. And then concepts. I mentioned earlier, I'll say it again, a lot of these applications are gonna ask for like a either written concept idea of like how you're gonna do. I mean, that makes sense. It's an application to do work. They're gonna ask like, how would you approach this? So it's not like they're just looking at your portfolio and then selecting which artist they like and then they're getting your concept, is they wanna have a little bit of that in there. Some of them will actually ask for mock-ups. I will say with City of Henderson, they ask you for a mock-up design. It doesn't have to be complete. They're not looking for, whatever. Other ones will have like, if you're selected, then you'll be compensated $250 to submit a design, and then we'll select the one out of the top 5 or whatever, right? So they kind of just recognize that. The application is not all of like those business documents I talked about. There's gonna be some expectation as an artist to show up in those applications. This is intentionally short because if you've done the ducks in a row slide, you should have what you need in the application. There might be a couple nuanced things. It might ask you like, how are you going to install this mural? So you'll have to type out your process. I would save that document, put it in your Google Drive so that when you apply in the future, you can reutilize. Cool, applying, any questions on applying?
Anything to look out for, like you were mentioning restaurant owners with kind of like more on the difficult, but just
sure.
Take a little bit more work. Anything to look for in applying to maybe like red flags or yellow flags?
In an application process, money is one thing. Like you want to make sure, kind of like know your price. If you're like, that doesn't seem fair. I would say for most municipalities, like they know what the kind of going rate is. It might be like, hey, we're doing this mural in celebration of American Pacific Islanders. So you might like prioritize one over the other if you think that you have a good chance of like, I wouldn't say don't do it if like, if you're Anglo or of another non-American Pacific Islander descent. But yeah, I would look for certain things, not necessarily red flags, but just certain descriptors that does that align with like what you can do. A lot of them will say we're looking for an artist or artist team, which we get excited about because we're like, artist team. If you think you can play to your strength and collaborate with someone on something and maybe you both can come up with a design, put your heads together, say that might help you. Other red flags, not necessarily a red flag, but just like, again, know what you're willing to apply for. If you have no like experience working with a massive budget or the square footage or the equipment you might need, do I want to spend 6 hours applying for this job? Or are there 3 other ones that I could take the time to do? You might want to. You might say, no, it's worth it to me. I've planned out my schedule. Like I would never discourage anyone from applying for something and shoot for the stars, but just kind of be real with yourself. So it's a good question. You'll kind of pick up, as you read more, you pick up more and more. Yes?
Any tips on negotiations, especially in hard situations or hard clients from personal experience?
Yeah, that's a whole separate class, but know your price. Like Dan and I won't do certain things below a certain amount just because it doesn't make sense. And that's different for everyone. So know that. 2, like we always think of the price per square foot depends on the amount of square foot, the texture of the wall, / is there gonna be equipment required, and then the complexity of the design. So a kind of negotiation tactic is, oh, okay, what you're telling me is your budget is this. You know, I can work within that budget. You know, I can make any budget work, but this is kind of the artwork that you're gonna get for that. If you want me to create kind of what you're looking for, if you want me to bring your vision to life, this is more the budget realm that you're gonna need to be in. You know, so you can kind of frame it like that. The municipality jobs, there's less flexibility in negotiation, but it's not zero. Especially if you've worked with them before and you're kind of like, hey, like this is getting a little out of hand. I've had to go get all these other different documents. Like the budget isn't worth it for me. Like there's got to be some additional compensation here. And I obviously wouldn't say that to anyone, or not just anyone. And I wouldn't say that to the first person I meet the first time, but just recognize is like, you know, be an advocate for yourself. Other tips on negotiation are don't just send a quote to a client. Ask to present the quote. So don't just be like, okay, yeah, I'll send you up a quote, or I'll draft you up a quote and send it to you. I would say, hey, I would send them an email like, hey, I have a quote, you know, based off our discussion, I put together a quote. When do you have some time to hop on a Google Meet or a Zoom call so I can present it to you? You want to hold the power of that presentation. You don't want them to see that number and get sticker shock or, you know, think about, you know, like, oh, that's fine. And then they're at dinner with their wife or their husband, and then they're like, that's actually way too much. And then, you know, you want to control that interaction. So that's a big step, especially if it's a larger one. Like, it's like, I'm not just going to email you an $80,000 invoice and then hope you like it. I'm going to try to sell that to you and tell you why it's that much. To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink, good book, you should read it. It basically says that everyone's in sales. Doesn't matter, people wanna say like, I'm not into sales, everything's sales. How to raise your kids, sales. You and your partner, you're selling each other different concepts. You know, like what we were just talking about, that's direct sales. You know, Dan and I were like, do we do it in here, do we do it in there? That's sales. I'm like, this is why we should do it in there. Those are my selling points, you know? So yeah, it's all sales, it's all reps. I'm 1,000% more confident today than I was 3 years ago when we were talking to clients. Now I'm like, what you got for me? Other additional things to consider when applying. We talked about this. Can you and do you want to do the job? So getting paid to learn a skill, talked about that. That's your draftsmanship. Again, might not be your favorite thing, but you could learn something new. And I admire artists that are like, I'll figure that out. I haven't done that before, but I'll figure it out. And typically in our experience, those artists get more jobs, not just by us, just in general, because they're willing to do more things. My typical kind of quip, and take this with a grain of salt, is I'm like, you're not Picasso. Like, people aren't going to estate auctions to get your stuff, you know? So recognize that. Like, you're gonna have to learn and try different things, and eventually, hopefully be able to sell your style of art. Things to consider when applying: the budget for it, equipment. So I put in here height devices. So, you know, do you have the ladders? Do you have the scaffold to do it? Do you have a scissor lift or a connection to a scissor lift to rent and do those things? A lot of that, you know, if you've worked with us in the past, you know we provide that for you. That's one of the things we pride ourselves on with Graffiti Park, is when you show up that, you know, you're not worried about bringing your own ladder. If you have one, we welcome it, but we'll figure it out for you. Timeline, you know, a lot of these projects are gonna have a specific timeline. Can you accommodate that? Are you gonna be in town? That sort of thing. And then again, that's, you know, work with them on that. You know, like, hey, you told me last week that I got this, and now you're telling me it needs to be done in 3 weeks. Like, you know, can I get a week extension or whatever? Like, be an advocate for yourself. Just because it's the city of whatever city it is doesn't mean you know, those aren't just real people in an office helping you make those decisions. Scale and scope. So again, I talked a little bit about the size of it, and, you know, recognizing based off these other things, do you have what that takes? I put resources, question mark. You know, shameless plug, these other places, when you work with them, there's nothing against you. Say you have the budget and you're the project manager, there's nothing against you reaching out to other artists to help you. A lot of big projects, artists will subcontract other artists out. Graffiti Park is always willing to help you and lend our arm and find a mutually beneficial way to do that. So if you ever get a job and you're like, you know, how am I gonna do this? Dan and I would love to chat about it and utilize your resources. Or reach out to your network. And, you know, it's not just Dan and I, just in general, utilize your resources. And then materials. A big thing that I want to touch on is, if you've only ever worked with us, you know when you show up, we have the paint there. But when you work and you do these other jobs on your own, and you're talking about that $1,500 budget, they're paying you $1,500 bucks, period. You gotta go get all of the paint the preps, the plastic, the tape, the paper, the easy preppers, the paint brushes, the rollers, all of that. Like you gotta get all that out of that budget. So then what's left over after gas and all that, right? So just things to consider when you're applying for these things. So you might get really excited when you get one, and you should, but just, you know, recognize what comes in handy or what you'll need to come in handy. Also, once you buy an easy prepper once, there's an incentive to take care of it. Then you can use that on the next project. Reduce, reuse, recycle your paintbrushes. Get higher quality stuff, wash them out. Do not put the paint rollers in the paint bucket unless you're gonna use that like tomorrow. But if it's gonna sit there, it's gonna suck up the paint, as we found out recently. Trays, grids, all that stuff, tarps. We got like 1,000 tarps now. At first we had no tarps. So then we had to go spend several $100s on tarps, but now we fold them nice, and you keep them there, right? We try to fold them nice, Dom knows. Or, you know, you just get yourself one of these, okay? You can get all that material, or you can get yourself one of these. That's a Graffiti Park team. You know, we're here to help. We were gonna put a baby picture of Dom on there, because Dom's always at projects, but we refrained from doing that. So now that you've actually got it, you have all your material, then you go paint. We're not gonna talk about actually doing the project itself. That'll be a different class, because I've already probably talked for way too long. Then that's up to you and your process, and we'll touch more on that in the future. And we have lots of fun education and snippets intentionally on our Instagram. You can go and we talk about those supplies if you need them. We talk about prepping a mural if you need them, or if you need that information. And our YouTube has a variety of different things on learning different styles and whatnot. So the application of the mural, that's where you get to put your expertise on there. The last step I'll say is client communications. One, you're gonna have to deal with design feedback back and forth, either with one person who is then relaying that to a committee or council, and then they're giving you a bunch of feedback, and then you gotta figure out how to bake all that in there. Or, you know, it might just be one-on-one or just a couple people, so just be cognizant of that. It's different for every municipality, and it's also different depending on the job. Sometimes you'll need to get a design to a person in time so that they can present it to the board in time. And if you don't do that, then you gotta wait another month to the next board meeting. So just, you know, consistent communication. That's why a calendar and email are really important. Be timely. Again, just adds a level of professionality. I hate to say this, but like when they're working, there's a stigma that comes with an artist. And so when these government offices are working with artists, sometimes they're like, they almost don't expect you to have a level of professionality sometimes. And so when you rise to the occasion and you're kind of like, no, like, yeah, here's my email, here's an email signature, I'll get that to you right away. Like that lends credibility to you and your name and your work. They will also either consciously or subconsciously likely want to work with you again, because they may or may not be used to that. Also, timely and consistent communication helps you get paid. So if you're on top of contacting them, it's a little bit easier to get paid. And then also recognize your after installation obligations. You might need to put a clear coat on it. A lot of times, after you're selected for a job, they might ask you, what clear coat are you putting on it? And you tell them. There's a lot of different options there. And just be fearless when you're talking to these people. Don't, know your price, be respectful, like just be a good human. I was wearing a sweater today, it says do good. So just be a good human. And the universe rewards you. It's got a weird thing. Karma's, whatever. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Check us out at graffitipark_LV on Instagram, www.graffitipark.org.